I do want to ask a question. Um, all of you guys are fairly new, it sounds like, and you picked a really, really good time to get in real estate, right? When COVID's happening, and there's a lot of limiting beliefs that we can have around that. Does anybody have any reservations or any fears or anything like that? Because I do think that needs to be addressed before we can get into actually the meat of what we're talking about today. You know, is anybody nervous or anything like that? Let's get that out in the open and talk about it. Because, you know, I've seen two mindsets from agents. I've seen, oh my gosh, this is amazing. We have a better time or a better chance now than ever to connect with our clients. And then I've also seen people who are like, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. I'm never going to sell another house as long as I live. Oh my gosh, what's going to happen? So we're somewhere on that spectrum, and we probably go back and forth depending on the day, right? Because we all know real estate can kick you in the you-know-whats over and over again in one day. That's kind of how it goes sometimes. So is anybody feeling that pressure or that, oh my gosh, you know, is it going to be okay? Does anybody have anything to talk about there? Otherwise, we'll just jump right into that. But I do want to do a quick pulse check.
I feel like right now, getting in, like just starting out is one of the best times, mostly because we're learning the systems differently than I feel like everyone else who kind of needs to relearn how to work just on the internet. Like I've been in the office maybe twice, which is like crazy, but that's what it is right now. And so I'm learning all the systems. For one, I feel like I'm learning more because I'm learning it on my own, essentially. Like I'm speaking with Katie and Steve, but I have to figure it out a lot of stuff by myself, which I feel like you kind of ingrain things like that better by doing it yourself. Yeah. But everything's virtual for me. So I feel like that's the way of the future. So
I would agree. And that's actually a great way to look at it. You know, I hadn't even come from it from that vantage point, but that's a fantastic way, because you're right. You know, agents who were previously doing it one way, all of a sudden we had to flip flop how we do it, and we had to change things. You guys don't have to change anything. You can just come right in, adopt the new systems, and just take off that much quicker because you're not fighting your old habits. Right. So I love that outlook. Beth, how are you guys? Have anything you're struggling with?
The only thing that I'm concerned about is reading more about mortgage qualification.
Yeah.
And are we going to face the next 3 months or so of a whole bunch of people not being able to be qualified for mortgage because so many people are out of work?
Right.
So my hope there is that, you know, banks will understand that, hey, COVID happened and that's not a normal out of work situation kind of thing.
Right.
And so, yeah, have you heard anything from bankers or lenders about what they may do about COVID out of work?
I do know that going through it, the guidelines changed. About a month into it, they completely changed the way they do things. And luckily our team wasn't personally hit by that, but I have obviously a lot of realtor friends, and a couple of them called me and said, oh my gosh, I just lost a deal the day of closing. They were approved and at a 620 credit score, and then they upped it. It had to be 640, and that knocked them out of eligibility the day we were supposed to close. And I've heard stories like that, but I don't think we're going to see any changes to the guidelines now. I think the changes that occurred 2 months ago are probably going to hold steady throughout the entire course. Now, if there's a blip in employment or anything like that in terms of the buyer, I don't see that holding. The lenders holding that against them, because whenever there's something crazy like that, a lender will oftentimes say, hey, I need a letter from the borrower explaining this situation. So I think as long as it's like, hey, COVID happened, I was furloughed or I was laid off or whatever, but I got a job immediately just as soon as I could, I think those kinds of letters will kind of nix any blip in employment history or anything like that. That would be the only thing that I could see potentially changing going forward as far as that goes. But I don't see guidelines changing too much more based on COVID, because like I said, they changed 2 months ago and I think they're good now. So, but I'm not a mortgage person, so I could tell you guys that, and then tomorrow they change them. So what I would say is find a mortgage person you trust, and just stay in their ear. You know, hey, what's going on? Hey, do you expect any changes? But that's what my guys are telling me, at least. So good question though. Beth, are you okay? You doing okay?
Yeah, I'm fine with everything. I'm over the whole COVID thing. I just want to move on. And if this is what it is, then you just have to accept it and work within the parameters that are set out there for now, you know?
That's the perfect mindset. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I agree with Taylor. It is kind of nice to come in because I hear like our office, at least, I don't know if it's all of Keller Williams, we discontinued Dotloop and now are using DocuSign. And so everybody's like, oh, this just happened.
Yeah.
I haven't done DocuSign yet. And so I just learned it fresh. I don't know what Dotloop is. I don't care.
Right.
So, we're all set to go. But no, I just have to look at it from a positive attitude and just, work with what we have.
Absolutely. So I'm glad that all of you guys have that mentality, because that's what's going to get through. People with that kind of mentality and not the woe is me and oh my gosh, this is so horrible, sky is falling. That's what's going to get you through. So I don't want to spend too much time there, but I know different agents have different opinions on it. So I did want to hint on it a little bit. So moving on from that, let's hop into the meat of today. So obviously we're going to talk about how to find show property and basically get people under contract, but do it in a way that protects your time, right? Because I heard many of you say that you want your time protected. So Taylor and Beth, well, you guys have been in it for about 6 weeks. I'm curious, how do you guys show property right now? What does that look like? What struggles are you guys having? And have you come across that person who wants to see 50 houses yet?
I haven't yet. I have, one buyer that I've been working with and pretty narrowed down from that standpoint. So we haven't gone out, but I mean, I'm showing it, I don't know what it was like beforehand. So this is, do you know what I mean?
Right.
I'm just doing what I'm doing. So, I mean, when I talked to him and I said, if you feel, I'm going to wear a mask. If you feel comfortable, you wear a mask. If you don't want to, I mean, that's up to them. I can't tell them what to do.
Right.
But it seemed normal to me, how we were doing it. So
yeah, the showing of the property actually really hasn't changed a whole lot. During the lockdown, it was different because we did everything virtually, right? We would go take it for them or get one from the listing agent. But now we're back to normal. So from my aspect, that's all the same. But, I'm curious is, how, are you finding people who's like, oh my gosh, this was the house for them. What happened? Why didn't they buy it? Or, oh my gosh, if I take them to one more house, I'm going to fall over. They've seen every house in Louisville that's available. So because at some point you will have that client, and that's when you'll say, no more. I'm not going through that again. That was a waste of my time. And that's when you'll make some pretty radical changes. Taylor, have you run into anybody like that yet?
I should sign my first buyer's contract today. It was supposed to be Monday, but now it should be today.
That's awesome.
So I haven't shown a house just yet.
Gotcha. Okay. So perfect. That means that we can just hop right in. I can give you guys some success tips. So hopefully you don't struggle and fail as much as I did, right? So learn from my failures, please. I'm going to share a lot of them throughout today's class because I have failed a lot, but I don't see failure as a bad thing. So, let me ask you guys this. When do you think showing the property starts?
What in like the process?
So when do you feel like now I consider this the official like showing of the property?
Well, I think that they need to have talked to a lender to be pre-approved. I think that kind of shows
absolutely
seriousness, if you will. It seems like you would be wasting quite a bit of time showing them $250,000 houses if they're only qualified or pre-qualified for a $200,000 house.
Correct.
So I guess that would be the start for me.
Okay. Anybody else got a different answer? No, that's exactly right. So here, and I may have phrased the question a little bit wrong. Showing of the property, the first step of showing a home is the buyer consultation. So what do I mean by that? You are going to set the foundation of your showings in your buyer consultation. So what expectations can you set in that buyer consultation that can set you up for success during the showings? So, Taylor, you want to talk about calendar and what that's going to look like. So in that buyer consultation, what if you told them, hey, I am available from 8 to 8. This is what I tell people. Your hours may be different. you can reach me via phone between 8 and 8, and I can show properties between those times. So, if you ask me for to go see a property at 8:30, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to do that. But as soon as you guys are available within those hours, we'll make it happen. Right. And if you work or anything and you can't be there from 8:30, I am happy to go do a virtual walkthrough myself, take a video for you and send it to you, or FaceTime you, or whatever that's going to look like. But if you tell them, these are my hours, these are when I'm working, and this is when I'm off, do you think they're going to get mad if you don't respond when you're supposed to be off? No, because you set the expectation, right? If you try to call your doctor and it's 9 o'clock at night and he says on his recording, our office hours are 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. or 5 p.m., are you going to be mad at him? Absolutely not. But for some reason, newer agents, and I was like this too, this really clicked for me about 2 years ago, and I've been in the business 5 years. We are the professional. If we tell people when we're available and stick to it, they're going to adjust their schedule as needed. But I think we have this mentality when we're new of, I want all the business, I want as much as I can get, and I'm going to drop everything and go take care of them, because if I don't, they're not going to use me. And you've probably heard a lot of mindset talk this week, because that's kind of how Keller is. That's a scarcity mindset, because what you're saying is that one person is more important than everything else, right? So if you're leaving your wife, husband, spouse, whoever, your kids, to go show that property, how do you think that's going to make your kids feel, or your wife or your husband? Right? And I can speak from experience.
My 16-year-old would be happy to have me leave.
Well, he says that. So I was actually 15 when my mother got into real estate. And me and my mom are on the same team, obviously. So I was 15 when she got into real estate. And overnight, my mom's the type of person, she's not a fail kind of a person. So she's going to do whatever it takes to succeed. We all know real estate, you can work, like Howie said, 75, 90 hours a week. The goal is not to. But there's definitely potential to do that if that's what you want to choose to do. So she was that kind of person. She would go out and hit the streets. And, overnight, I lost my mom coming to soccer games and basketball games and things of that nature. So there was a little bit of pent up, I called it resentment in there for me, right? So when I got into real estate, I started doing the same thing. And then I noticed a pattern in myself. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not hanging out with my friends as much. I'm not being around my family as much. And I'm a very family oriented person. And so I kind of looked in the mirror and I was like, okay, what am I doing? Like, yeah, it's great that I'm working with these clients and I'm having some successes, but what's the point of having successes if you don't get to, the reason to have those successes is to share those moments and to be with your family and have a life worth living. But if your life is your business, it doesn't work out. So that's me talking around a very long point, just to say, set the expectation of these are my hours. And if you have one day off a week, set it, right? You heard Amy talk about, my wife and I just found out we're pregnant. And she told me, she said, hey, you need to keep our kid one day a week, because we have daycare and babysitters set up for everything else. But every Wednesday is going to be my day to keep our kid. So now I'm going to tell people, hey, I'm available Monday and Tuesday and Thursday and Friday, and then on the weekends. But I'm not available Wednesday. If you need someone on Wednesday, here's a number of another person on our team who you can get a hold of at any time on Wednesday. So then if they call me and I don't answer on Wednesday, they're not going to be frustrated. Does that make sense? So that's one example of how you can set an expectation in a buyer consult. What other expectations can you set in a buyer consult to set you up for success while showing property or whatever that's going to look like? What else would be important enough to you to set the expectation?
I would think that if you can set an expectation of how many houses you expect to go see, if you can say, hey, we're gonna look virtually at 15 houses. We're gonna pick our favorite 5, and then we're gonna go tour the favorite 3. Or I'm just throwing numbers out, but if you set it ahead of time that this is how many houses we should be touring, does that work?
Absolutely. And Howie, I've taught this class a lot. No one has ever said that. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because normally I have to bring it up, but that's exactly right. There's nothing that says you can't tell people, hey, when I send you property, take the ones that I send you and put them in order, and we're going to go look at the top 3. And I think we're all in agreement that if the top 3 don't work, then we're going to wait till a better one pops on the market. We don't need to go see all of them because those were your top 3. So if those don't do it for you, what makes your next 4 through 10? What makes you think those are going to do it for you? But if we go see your top 3, we're going to choose from those 3 which one we like, and then we're going to write an offer. What's wrong with saying that, right? Because what you're doing is you're telling them, and I tell people, I say, after you've seen about 6, they all start to run together in your head. And it gets really blurry. You can't remember them. So my advice is, at the most, go see your top 5, but that's it. That's all we're going to go see. And that expectation came when I was showing one client. I kid you not. I mean, it was probably every bit of 50 to 52 houses. And before we finally wrote an offer and got it accepted. And I looked at, my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, and I said, never again will I do this, because they took me for a ride for about 3 months. We'd go see a house and it wouldn't be the one. And we'd go see 2 houses and none of them would work. And it just stacked and stacked and stacked. And they took so much of my time. And it's not that I don't want to be there for my client, but I set them up for failure. Because if you've seen 50 houses, how easy do you think it is to know when you found the one?
Right.
It's not, because they all run together. You can't remember them. So you're exactly right, Howie. If you tell them, and you can decide whatever your numbers are going to be, you don't have to say that. But I heard that script at family reunion one time and I was like, oh my God, that's it. That's how I can take more advantage of my time and be more efficient. Right. So literally the script I use in the buyer consultation is, guys, I want to send you some property. I want you to pick out your top 5. And from those, if you think we need to go look at all 5, we will. Normally, I find that most people, it's their top 3 that they're really jazzed about. So we'll go look at your top 3, and from there, we'll make a decision. And we'll figure out which one we want to move forward on, and we'll write the offer, and we'll see what happens. And then we go on to how to position an offer, right? But I don't let it be a question. I say, this is how it's done, right? Because you guys are working with a lot of internet leads. And if your internet leads are anything like ours, a lot of them are first-time home buyers, right? You guys get a lot of first-time home buyers off the internet? Have you run into that?
Yes, mostly.
Yeah. So what that means is they don't know. They've never looked at property. They don't know. They have an idea in their mind probably, but who's the professional?
Yeah. Yeah. They and I think back to the first time I bought a house. I thought of it like The Bachelor, that I would, it would be bachelorette, like an 8-week process, and I would hand roses to the different houses that I like, and eventually narrow it down to the 3. And like, if we can set that expectation of this is the best way to do it. In my experience, this is the best way to do it, and that kind of puts it in their head that this is how I'm going to get it done.
Absolutely. And I would tell you guys, don't let them outscript you, right? We always say that if something happened and someone did something that we advise them not to or whatever, we got outscripted, right? You've got to script them. And you're not coming from a place of manipulating or taking advantage of, because I've heard some people say, oh, I don't want to take advantage of anybody. You're not. What you're doing is you're setting them up for success to get the house that they want without losing it. Right. So I don't know if you guys have had this occur yet. I've had someone, and I sat down and we had that conversation, and they said, well, I'm the kind of person, I need to look at 10 different things before I can make a decision. Hey, I love the fact that you told me that's how you can make a decision, because that's another question I ask in my buyer consultation is, how do you make decisions? So thank you for bringing that up. Let me ask you this question. If the initial list that I send you, there's only 3 houses that match your criteria because the inventory is so low, are we going to sit around and wait for 7 more to pop up? And if we have to sit around and wait for 7 more to pop up, do you think those other 3 are going to be there if one of them is the one for you? Well, probably not. Okay, so what information can I give you to help you make a decision? Because what I'm hearing you say is you need a lot of information to make a decision. It may not be that you need 10 houses to compare, but what can I give you to help you make that decision? All right, what if you knew what people needed at a showing to know if they're going to write an offer or not? Would that be valuable information? Then ask for it. All of showing property, in my opinion, comes down to what you say at the buyer consultation. Showing property is the easiest part of the job, if I'm being honest. You open the door, you ask some questions, and then they are going to decide if it's the one for them or not. But you have to set the right foundation in the buyer consultation so that they know what's coming and they know what it's going to look like when they like one, right? Now, who does not want to come across as salesy or as, oh my gosh, I don't want them to feel like I'm pushing them or anything like that? Does anybody have those feelings? Because I know I did when I was new. When I was new, I was like, I'm going to let them do their thing. And I'm going to say, you know, hey, if you guys want to go for it, great. And if you don't, that's great too. Like, let's just be friends, right? I'm a high I and a high D. So my I would come out when I was showing property. And I did not want that rejection. I didn't want them feeling like I was pushing them. Right? You have to understand you're not pushing them as long as you ask questions. That is the key to showing property, is asking questions, not telling them, right? Do not go in there and say, this is the bathroom. This is the living room. Here's a bedroom. They know all of that. They watch HGTV, right? They know what those rooms look like. They don't need you to do that. What they need you to do is say things like, hey, when we sat down, you said you wanted a kitchen with a lot of cabinet space. How do you feel about these cabinets? And then they can verbalize their thoughts and put them together. And you asking that question will help them get clarity, right? The other thing that to me is most important, my goodness, we're already past 10 o'clock. The other thing that's most important to me is when I sit in that buyer consultation, I tell them, it's my job as your realtor to talk you out of every house we're going to go see. I'm going to give you reasons not to buy the house. And you will know it's the house for you when the reason I tell you does not matter. When I give you a reason not to buy it and that reason does not matter to you and you fight me on it, that's when you know you found the right house. Now, if you say that to someone, you obviously have to give them a reason at each house why they shouldn't buy it, right? So what would that look like? So, you know, there are some people who, the inventory is short, right? We know that. They'll give me their perfect area, right? Oh, I really want to be in Lake Forest or whatever. I'm using that as an example. I really want to be in the subdivision Lake Forest. Okay, totally understand that. And there's nothing available in Lake Forest that matches what they want. But there is one in Landis Lakes, right across the street from Lake Forest. So I might send them that and say, hey guys, I know this isn't Lake Forest, but it's right across the street and there's nothing in Lake Forest. So I don't think this is the right area for you, but I wanted you to see it. That way you could at least know it's there. And if you don't want to see it, no problem, right? So I feed them a negative, and then if they still want to see it, that tells me they like it quite a bit, right? And then we get to the house and I'm going to say to them, guys, this isn't Lake Forest. Should we even go in the house? What if you love it, right? We call those front porch conversations. It's where you set the stage for, guys, what if this is the one? Are you ready to make a decision? And if they say, we are ready to make a decision if we like it, what does that tell you? If they like it, you better ask them if they're going to write an offer. And that's not you being pushy. That's you making sure they don't lose the house. Because in today's market, if a house is priced right, it's going off the market that day or that weekend, depending on the price point. Does that make sense? So what are your questions you guys have about that? I just covered a lot without asking for questions, and I like to have interaction and make sure you guys are kind of understanding this. We can do some role playing. What questions or what else do you want me to dive into as far as that stuff goes?
Can you give an example or two of what kind of things you would point out? Because you don't want to be bad-mouthing their future house, right? But
right.
But like, what kind of things would you normally point out to say?
Well, I think it depends on the client, and it depends on what's important to them, right? So if they tell you, I need a big backyard, right? And we go to the back and you say, first of all, you should get clarity around that. What does big mean to you, right? Because big to some people is very small to other people, and big to some people is like 10 acres. And, you know, what's that mean to you? So assuming you figured that out, you go to the backyard and maybe it's not quite as big as what you thought, right? So maybe what you say to them is, guys, listen, I know you said big backyard. This house looks like it's more front yard than backyard. You know, I'm not sure this is enough space. How do you guys feel about that? So that could be an example. Another one could be, is it around railroad tracks? Is it, it's off a main road? It's outdated, right? Maybe they say they want a move-in ready home and they want it updated, but then when they go see like one or two of the kitchen or the bathroom is outdated. So guys, I know you said you didn't want a project. This kitchen looks like it's about 20 years old. How do you feel about that? Right? And if they tell you, yeah, that's a no-go for us, hey, at least you know. Or they might say, well, you know what? We can make it work for now. Like, it's livable. We can live in it and just do the updates as we go. Right? Or, oh, the living room is not big enough or whatever. It just depends on what they told you they wanted. And then you get there and you see what it's going to look like. So I think that's more of a case-by-case basis. But you don't want to go in there and be like, oh, my God, the paint sucks, right? Or something like that, because that's an easy fix. You want to point out something that may not be the easiest fix because that's what they're going to have to live with, right? And you want them to be your friend and send you referrals after you close. So you don't want to talk them into a house that really they don't want. Not that we do not have that kind of power. Let's be honest. We're not that good of salespeople. You can't talk someone into spending $500,000 on something they don't want. But if they're on the edge, we can maybe push them a little bit more than we should, and they can have buyer's remorse or whatever later. So you just want to make sure you let them know the most glaring defect you can find and see how they feel about it. And you know what? If it's a no, do you think they're going to trust you more because you brought up something that made them not want a house as opposed to talking them into it? Abso-freaking-lutely, right? I can't tell you how many referrals I've gotten, and I've got certain people trained because they give us so many referrals. They'll connect us via text. So they'll put like me, the client that I helped, and then the referral all in a group text. And they'll say, hey, this is Drew, the realtor I was telling you about. He's the one who talks you out of the houses. Like that's how I've become known to my clients, because I tell them that so much, right? I'm like, guys, remember I told you I was going to talk you out of a house? This is one of those cases. I'm sorry, but this master sucks. You said you wanted an ensuite and there is no bathroom. What are we doing here? Right? Now, Howie, to your point, you don't want to shit all over the house. Pardon my French. You don't want to, just totally pick the house apart. But if they tell you this is really important to them, you are within your rights. And I tell people, if you send me something that doesn't have your top three criteria that you said in the house, I'm not taking you to see it. Right? It's my job to hold you accountable to what we talk to. That buyer consultation, guys, is so important.
Yeah.
Right? Get their top three. And if their top three is 2 bathrooms and they send you a house with a bath and a half, don't take them to see it. Yeah. Or push back on them. Let me say that. Don't say, well, I'm not taking you. And then they're like, but we really want to see it. Figure out why. Are they just taking you to look at a house, or do they really have an intention of buying it? Right? So figure that out. Say, guys, you told me you needed 2 full bathrooms. Why are we looking at a bath and a half? We said that was super important to us. That was one of your top 3. What are we doing? You have permission to say that, but you need to let them know on the front end that that's what you're going to do. Because then you don't need to go show that house. Right? You don't need to leave your family unless there is a real opportunity that you're helping someone get the house of their dreams. That's the only reason you should ever leave your family, is if you can make a difference in someone else's life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So any other questions around any of that? Like I said, I know I'm just throwing information at you guys.
And it makes the most sense to use their own words, to remind them of what they said.
Absolutely. And that's why you should take notes, right? Like I'll bring a Manila folder for me. And then like we have a WSG folder we give them that's got all our paperwork in it. And I'll bring a Manila folder for me and I'll write down like, hey, if it's a couple, here's the husband's top 3, here's the wife's top 3, and then here's all the other ones. And so when they send me a house they want to look at, I compare it to that Manila folder and I'm like, oh man, they wanted 4 bedrooms. This one's only got 3. What's going on? Is there a room in the basement? No, there's no room in the basement. Why are we going to look at this one? Right? Because I'd like to think I have a good memory, but man, if I don't write it down, I'm not remembering anything. So just be sure to write that stuff down. But you're exactly right, Howie. If use their own words against them, because then you're not doing anything but holding them accountable to what they said they wanted. Right? Have you all heard the term beer goggles? Hopefully, right? You have a little too much to drink, and like that person over there, the other end of the room looks maybe a little more attractive than they would have. Well, I believe there's such a thing as house goggles. All right. This is another thing that I say in my buyer consults. So there was one client I was helping, I'll never forget this. She needed a 3-bed, 2-bath home for I think it was $75,000 house. So we're looking, and there was nothing in the area that she wanted. So we extended the area. Well, all of a sudden she sends me a 2-bed, 1-bath house and says, can we go see this? It's a beautiful flip, right? They did an amazing job on the flip side, but it was a 2-bed, 1-bath, and it was a 3-bed, 2-bath that she wanted. So I pushed and pushed and pushed and said, we really don't need to see this. This is not something that at all that you wanted to, wanted from me. So unbeknownst to me, she actually called the list agent to set up a showing because I wouldn't show it to her. And, she went to see it. And then she called me later that night and she said, I'm so sorry. I went to see that house. And I said, girl, what in the hell are you doing? And why didn't, if you really wanted to see it that bad, I would have showed you, but I'm just holding you accountable. She goes, no, I really appreciate it. That other agent tried to talk me into it. And as soon as I got there, I realized that it was nothing of what I wanted. I just thought it was pretty. So we need to understand that house goggles are a thing. And when people get desperate, they're going to make sacrifices or feel like they have to. But if they want a 3-bed, 2-bathroom house and that's important to them, is that something they can give up? No. Can they give up updates? Sure, right? You can live without the beautiful painted cabinets. You can paint them yourselves, but you can't live without a bedroom and a bathroom. Does that make sense? So hold them accountable to what they tell you. All right, so what else? These are good questions. What other expectations can you set around showing the property or whatever that's going to look like?
Can you set the expectation of how long the tour typically lasts and what we're going to look for?
Man, tell you what, Howard, you're bringing up stuff not many people bring up. You can, if you want to say that, you can absolutely say, hey guys, typically people don't spend more than 30 minutes in a house when they're doing a showing. Now, what I would do is I would ask a question instead of saying, hey, we're only going to take X amount, because you do, like, your high C's in a disc profile are going to take longer to look at a house. That's just how they are. So I would do that by asking the question, how long do you typically like to look at something before you make a decision? So how long do you think we would need to see the house before you knew if it was the one for you or not? So ask the question. That way you can set yourself up for success and know, okay, so for each showing, they're going to take 45 minutes. And if you've got 3 or 4 showings and each house is going to take 45 minutes, how much better can you plan? Right? If I'm going to be in this house for 45 minutes, then I got drive time to this house, you can get real specific and plan out your night, right?
Yeah.
So then you can tell your husband or wife, hey, I'll be home at 8:30. And if your wife's anything like mine, if you say 7 and you're not home at 7, you're in trouble. So knowing your schedule like that will go a very long way. All right. Or then you can know, hey, if they take 45 minutes to look at a house, I need to be home by 8 o'clock tonight. You can't go any later than 7. Right. The more information you can get about them, the better. So what other expectations can you set?
Hey, Drew, if you don't mind me piping
Sure.
in. So first I wanted to say you've been addressing the DISC, the DISC,
Yep.
and just in case no one has heard about that or learned about that just yet, just so you know, the team meeting that we have today at 11 o'clock, Linda Cecil, our team leader, is going over the DISC profile with several members of our leadership team. And they are going to talk specifically on how D's like to be communicated with, I's, S's, and C's. So if you can sit in on that and learn about that, everything that Drew's telling you about how long someone takes to do something, or, what kind of script they might need, it all comes down to their personality style and how they like to be communicated with. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is, as far as expectations, I would add one of the things when I was on the sales side, I would go ahead and start as you're walking through the house, make sure that they understand that houses aren't going to be perfect.
Absolutely.
You know, we already talk about the repairs and the inspections, and I just kind of nonchalantly say, you know what, every house has a honey-do list, or every house has stuff. And, you know, I'll be going through those things with you after the inspection to find out what's important to us. So because they're going to be, some of them, especially those C's, are going to be looking at a small crack or a small, you know, windowsill that's not right. And I just go ahead and like, yeah, that's even new construction.
Yep.
I've had some of the longest inspection reports be for new construction. So,
yep. That's a great point. And thank you for bringing that up. So one way that we get around that is we tell people, listen, when I'm at the house, I'm going to tell you to rank this house on a scale from 0 to 10. And what I tell them is 0 is, oh my gosh, I wouldn't buy this for my mortal enemy. It's that bad. And 10 is, oh my gosh, why was I not in here earlier? But part of being a human is never being satisfied, right? That's just how humans are. So I tell people you're never going to find a 10. But if we find a 7, an 8, or a 9, that is high enough that we need to seriously consider making an offer. And we're going to talk about what would stop you. If it's a 5 or a 6, we might keep it on our list. But unless I do a price reduction or something changes, we're going to forget about it. And if it's a 4 or below, we're going to crumble that piece of paper up, throw it behind us, and just and forget we came. And when you tell people that, and then you say, hey, rank the house, you know, what do you think this one is? And they say an 8, and all you have to do is this, and they know that you're saying, do we need to make an offer? Then all it takes is this, and you closed them. That's it, right? Now you're not talking them into a house. You're telling them if it's a 7, 8, or a 9, we're going to make an offer. So if they give it an 8, you do this, you know it's time to have the conversation about the offer. But if you don't set that expectation up front, you know, again, everything I do, I don't want to feel salesy. I want to feel like I'm adding value to their life. So by setting the expectation, I'm telling them, if you give it that number, we're talking about an offer. So you're making that decision, not me. So then I don't feel as salesy. That's where the script came from. But it's just an easy way to have that conversation, is to say, okay, an 8, guys, you know what that means. Let's talk offer. What are you guys thinking? It's just, it leads naturally into closing them, because when it's the right house for them, there's going to be at least one objection you have to overcome from one of the 2 of them. Now your high D's out there, they're going to be like, let's do it, right? We're ready to make a decision. But if it's an S or a C, they're going to need a lot of information from you, right? And then to go back to a previous question, if you ask them, what's your decision-making look like? And they're like, well, I'm the type of person who loves to sleep on it. One of my favorite scripts I ever heard, I don't even remember where I heard it from, is, that is fantastic, Mr. Buyer. I am so glad that you told me you like to sleep on it, but we're not in a sleep on it market. If you want to sleep on it, you're not going to sleep in it. So what information can I give you that would help you not need to sleep on it? What information can I come to the showing with, or give you the day before, right? Hey, if I'm going to go show a property on Friday, what information can I give you Thursday so you can sleep on that? And then we'll go see the property, and then you can tell me on Friday if you think we need to go for it or not, because we're just not in that kind of market, right? I'm not pushy. I'm just telling him this is how the market is. And then you ask them what you can do in lieu of that, if that makes sense. So, but Amy's exactly right. If you guys can make that team meeting today, it's going to be super important. We address the disc on our team every single day, right? When a file goes to the admin because we put it under contract, we say, hey, this person's a high D, so get to the point. Or this person's a C, they need all the facts and figures. Or this person's an S, they're super nervous, they need reassurance every day. Or they're a high I, and you're going to get their life story every time you talk to them. So we use it at a high level every day. And if you know the kind of person you're in front of, the message never changes. What changes is your delivery, because how I will talk to a D is very different than how I'm going to talk to an I. But I'm saying the same thing, but I say it in a different way. And it really clicked for me when I was brand new. I was representing my wife's aunt and uncle in a home. And I was telling them, we had a pretty big issue pop up in inspection. And they were like, well, what's going to happen? And I was bringing out my high I, and I was like, guys, it's going to be fine. We're going to figure it out. Like, my optimism was showing, right? Like, we got this, go team. That's not what they needed to hear from me because they're high C's and an I and a C are opposites. So what I was telling them was actually frustrating them. So they came back at me and they were like, we don't need a cheerleader, we need a realtor. Said that to my face. Did not feel good in the moment because, again, high I don't like rejection, and I felt like they were rejecting me. But what I realized is I was not in their house of communication. Their high C's, they need to know the systematic way that we're going to get through the issue. So I had to break it down and say, okay, well, we're going to ask them to fix it. If they do, we're good. If they don't, then we're going to do this. And then after this is done, we're going to do this. And then all of a sudden I broke it down and they were like, okay, we're good. But I was trying to lead with the wrong, I'm trying to communicate with the wrong style because that's my house of communication. That's not their house of communication. So as a realtor, it's very important for you to understand the 4 DISC quadrants and to hop into their house of communication so that you can effectively communicate, right? So if you're a high D, for example, excuse me, and you're in front of an S, those are opposites, right? Because a D is like, get it done, get it done, get it done. And an S is like, hold up, I need to think about it, right? I'm not someone who moves very quickly. I fear change, I fear loss, and I fear risk. So if a high D, if you're an agent and you're like, hey, are we writing an offer? What's going on? Why aren't we writing an offer? It's not how you talk to a high S, right? So understanding those 4 quadrants of the DISC profile, very, very important. You need to know the message you want to get across, and then you need to learn how to effectively communicate it. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah, I had never heard of the DISC. I haven't learned that yet. So
Oh, it's very important. So if you guys can stay
sounds
on for
very
that,
important.
yeah, if you guys can stay on for that team meeting, definitely do it. Taylor, I'm pretty sure Bella Demora, do they do that, Amy? I thought they did the DISC assessment.
You know, we've moved a little bit more toward the KPA. It's the Keller Personality Assessment, so it's a little more in depth. I still like the fundamentals of the DISC though, and that's why I recommended to Linda that we talk about it.
Yeah, we do both, and both of them are huge, right? Because they tell you the DISC is how to effectively communicate and its behavior, and then the KPA is strengths and gaps.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And so Vicki at the front desk can send you the specific instructions to, we have an account where we get, it matches up against the sales side. So it gets specific for the DISC and for the KPA on the sales side. Bless you. And so if anyone is looking to join in on that meeting, I put the meeting ID reminder in the chat box too. So it'll be interesting. I think Seamus Green will be one of them, and maybe Becky Lush. So, you know, some mega agents that are going to be talking about, you know, how they like to be communicated with. And then that translates into every area of your life, not just work, but personal, even your kids. So for those of you with young kids, you know, how to talk to them and get them to do what you need them to do.
Yeah. Kids, spouses. When I took this, I was like, oh my gosh, no wonder my girlfriend's always mad at me. I'm talking to her like this, and that's not at all how she likes to be communicated with. Right. So this transcends real estate. You can use this to effectively communicate with anybody. So it's very important. Sorry, Howie, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. If you want to get a quick assessment in there, I put one in the chat. It's a 16 question. It's not a full assessment, but it's the one that we used at my previous employment. And so it takes like 3 minutes if you want to just kind of get a preview of with your DISC assessment.
Yeah. So
Perfect. Thank you.
When we wrap up at 10:55, why don't you guys hop in and do that real quick, just to get a quick glimpse of who you are, see if it makes sense, and then listen to Linda and the members of the ALC. Unfortunately, I can't be there, but the other members of the ALC who are going to say, hey, this is how I like to be communicated with. It's invaluable information, and you use it in literally every phase, right? You use it in the buyer consult, you use it when you're showing property, you use it when you go over inspections, and believe it or not, you use it when you ask for referrals, right? If I know someone is a high C, then I'm going to need to talk to them like, you know, hey, it's been such a pleasure walking you through this entire process from yada, 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 because the C needs to see the benefit of what we were able to do for them. And then, you know, by the way, we would love the honor of, you know, helping someone through those processes as well with you. Whereas a high D, I'd be like, dude, you're awesome. I know you know awesome people. I'd love to help them. So even at something as simple as asking for referrals, the script changes based on their DISC profile as well. So I could talk about the DISC all day long. I'm like a huge nerd about that stuff. anyways, so anybody want to talk? And you, obviously the team is going to be going about there, but do you want to talk about it, how it pertains to the consult or the showing property piece? Or do we want to just keep on moving on and talk about more expectations that we can set?
I'm open to
I know it once.
anything. It's all good information, honestly.
What else do you guys want to know, right? We have 25 more minutes. I want to make sure you guys are getting the value that you want because you're showing up early in the morning kind of to, and you're taking an hour and a half out of your day. So I want to make it worth your while. What else do you guys want to know?
What do you give them when you're walking through houses? Is there a checklist, or is there a clipboard and a notepad, or like what are they walking through the house with?
So typically, I give them a printout of the MLS with my information on it, and then I have my iPad with me that has the MLS for me, so that I can go through all that kind of stuff. But it's really funny you brought that up. So I have a really good buddy of mine, and she was wanting to go see some property, and it was before, I call it a field trip, and I say, hey, you need to go out, see if the market's going to deliver what you want to deliver, and if it is, because the market's so short, we're going to sell your house, and then we're going to help you buy one. So in that aspect, I had what I called a field trip checklist, and I said, will the market deliver based on the houses we see today? Rank them. How's the location? How's this? How's that? And it actually morphed into, now we give them a checklist and we say, hey, for this property at this address, location 1 to 10, what's it look like? Condition 1 to 10, what's it look like? How's the price? What do we think about the price of it? Based on your top 3, how's that go? What does it need? What's it missing? What would you change about it? So we actually do now have a checklist for it, but that's only been in place for about 6 months. So good question though. But prior to that, I will say it was all questions that I was just asking. All I did was put it on paper so that I didn't have to ask, right? Or I didn't have to start the conversation. They knew what was coming at each house, if that makes sense. So you don't have to have the checklist if you don't want to, as long as you have the right questions. What else? What else can I tell you guys?
I heard in a previous training about be aware that people have cameras inside their house now, and on their front porch especially.
Yeah.
And so maybe some of those front porch conversations are happening closer to the curb.
Some of them are. So you can obviously see when they have a Ring doorbell, and if you need to quote unquote behave. A lot of them, though, can still happen on the front porch, right? Because there's nothing like a front porch conversation looks something like this. Guys, you were really excited about this one. What is something that would stop you from buying it? Right? That's a good front porch conversation. Another one is, when we do those field trips, inevitably, sometimes they're going to love the house and say, oh my God, I want to offer on it. Right? So maybe a front porch conversation is right as you stick the key in, you stop, you pause for effect, you pull it out and you go, guys, I was just thinking, what if we love this? Like, are you guys ready for that? And then you shut up, right? Do not say anything else. You just say, oh my gosh, what if? Are you all ready? And then they're going to tell you if they are or if they're not, right? Typically it's, oh my gosh, yeah, we're ready if we love it. And they'll get so excited and amped up. And then you go in and they're like, oh my God, I knew it. So you can really set the stage with those front porch conversations, and maybe one that already has an offer on it, right? They have 2 offers, stick the key in, pull it back out. Guys, this has 2 offers. Are we sure we want to go in? Yeah, we don't want to lose it. I think we're going to have to go over list price. Are you okay with that? Yeah, we're okay with it. Just let us in, right? Because that's when they're so excited. What have you just gotten permission to do? You've just got permission to set them up for success in an offer, right? But if you go to stick the key in and you go, guys, I think we're going to have to go over list price. Are you sure you're okay with that? And they tell you no. Well, what do you know now? Don't waste your time. If there's 2 offers on it, it was listed today, you're going to have to go over list price. That's just where the market is. So if they tell you they're not prepared to do that, you put the key back in the key box and you walk away. right? And they may stop you. They may say, oh, hold on. Okay, I think we're ready to do that. So you just get clarity around what they're thinking and what that looks like. But all of those conversations you can still have as long as, if you're on camera. Now, I would not talk about positioning an offer. I would not talk about price. I would not talk about anything like that, obviously. In the car or in the home or on the front porch, I would talk about that at the cars, right? Hey guys, here's my advice on the offer. If you have time, go to dinner, talk about it, let me know. Otherwise, hey, call me from the car. We're going to talk about the offer, right? That's typically what I do. So good questions, Howie. What else? What other expectations are there that you can set?
Do you talk to them about, if they do have their offer accepted, what the expectations are from where that process goes? So the inspections and, do you get into that further with them?
I do in the buyer consult. So in the
Okay.
buyer consult, I tell them this is what the process looks like, right? We'll go find a house, write an offer, and then what happens? We actually have a sheet and it says what your mama never told you about buying a house. And so we go under contract, now what? And so we'll go in and it's interactive. We fill in blanks and we fill in prices of like inspections and appraisals and things like that. So we do walk them through that process. And then when we're at the house, we'll say, okay, guys, we'll write the offer. If it's accepted, remember, we need your good faith within 72 hours. So you set the expectation on the front end and then you just remind them as you go, right? So I even set expectations of inspections, right? So guys, then you're going to have an inspection and, when you're spending $200,000, are you not going to move forward because of a leaky faucet? Probably not. But what we're going to look for on the inspection is does it have mold? Is there a foundation problem? Does it need a new roof? Things that cost a lot of money. But the smaller things for like $100 or $200, probably not going to make us walk away from the house. Don't you agree? And then they're like, yep, I agree. Because I kid you not, I've had a buyer walk away from a house because they were so mad at the seller that they walked away from a house because of a leaky pipe. Now, do you really think that should have stopped them? No. What stopped them? Their emotion in that moment and their frustration at the seller. But if you have the conversation and say, guys, that's not a reason to walk away from a house. And you tell them up front, hey, we're not going to walk away for something small, right? Then it gives you the ability to have the conversation and say, hey guys, remember when we said, we have the inspection, we're not going to walk away from a leaky faucet? I'm feeling like we're headed toward that area. So talk to me about, has anything changed? Or do you think we're just mad at the seller? Well, remember, we're done with the seller as soon as the deal's over. So is it really worth us losing this house? Or do you think we can just move forward the way we were going to and then be done with the seller in 25 days or whatever? So it just, everything comes back to that buyer consult. That's my big mantra. I mean, I teach the consult class at our office all the time, and you just set yourself up for success. And if you get nothing else out of today, here's what I want you to get out of. I keep asking you, what expectations can you set? Because there's an infinite number. Anytime you have something that goes wrong, it's because you did not set the expectation. So, I set expectations about offers. Guys, we're in a market where you have to go over list price if a home is priced correctly, right? I'll run a CMA. I'll make sure it's priced where it needs to be priced. But as long as it is, we're going to have to go up and over. So if you're pre-approved up to 225, we probably need to look at houses about 210. Does that make sense? Oh, yeah, that makes sense. So now all of a sudden we're looking at 210. We find them one. Guys, I think we're going to have to go to 220. Are you okay with that? Well, yeah, you said that in the buyer consult. We're probably going to have to go over. Okay, that's fine. But if you have someone who wants to lowball in this market, is that an effective use of your time? Is that a reason for you to leave your family? No. So it's all about that. Now, another big one is making sure that they're in a position where they're ready to go, right? So one question I love is, Beth, I'm excited to be your real estate agent of choice. Let me ask you a question. If I were to find you the perfect house tomorrow, are you ready to make an offer? If Beth tells me no, what do I know? She's probably not someone I should be actively showing homes to right now, right? But I need to dig to find out why. Maybe she's someone who wants to sleep on it, right? Maybe she's coming into money. She's getting a raise at her job in 6 months. I need to figure out why Beth is not ready to make that decision tomorrow. Now, never ask a client why. Why puts people on the defensive. So what you say instead is, help me understand that thought process. What would get in the way of us writing an offer tomorrow? Right? Never use the word why if you can help it. So, it just depends on their situation. So, oh, well, I'm still just looking, right? We get that how many of you have ever gotten that, right? I'm just browsing. I'm just looking. They're looking for a reason, guys, right? Like you walk into a department store and someone walks up to you and they're like, hey, what can I help you find? And you're like, nothing, I'm just looking. You and I both know you went in there for that pair of shoes, but you're not going to tell them that until when? Until you need to find them in your size. Same thing with these people. They're not going to look for your help until they need it. So it's our job to dig and figure out what help they need and give it to them. Does that make sense? Amy, did you have something you wanted to say?
Well, I'm just kind of writing down some logistics. So I know we've talked a lot of the theory, the scripts, the expectations. When we're talking about finding and showing homes, I'm also thinking about the times that I had hard lessons I learned when opening the doors.
Yeah.
For instance, when somebody's there that shouldn't be.
Yep.
So one of the things that I would do as soon as I opened the door, I would scream out, "Realtor!"
Absolutely.
So, that's just one thing that came in mind. I also only locked myself out once because I learned my lesson that you always want to keep the key to the door in your pocket.
Yep.
If you don't have pockets, have something on you, especially if, ladies have a dress on or something without pockets, just have something where you can hold on to the keys, because often a screen door or something will shut and it locks you out. And yeah, you don't want to be in that situation. I would also give you a heads up that there are times, if it's a rental that you're showing, like it's on the market, but there's a tenant there, tenants aren't always happy about the fact that the house is for sale. So just be sensitive to that they might be surprised because maybe the agent didn't alert them, or even if they did, they're putting up a fight because they want to stay there. So I don't know. What other horror stories do you have that might save them some trouble?
Oh man, I could go on and on about this one. First and foremost, this is especially important. Thank you for bringing that up, by the way, Amy. This is especially important for ladies. Someone needs to know where you are at all times. Mm-hmm. If you're going to show 3 houses, tell a spouse, tell a fellow realtor, a family member, a friend, tell somebody where you're going to be, what area, maybe even give them the addresses and say, hey, if you don't hear from me by this time, call the cops or whatever. We have a saying on our team, if anybody uses the term red folder, we're in trouble. Mm-hmm. So we have like a group me that's always going on. So if someone says in that group me, hey, can you bring me the red folder? We know alarms go up. We know where everybody is and say, okay, we need to get the cops to this place. Now, luckily, we've never had to use that, but you need something like that in place. And that's especially important for the ladies. Howie, I don't know if you and me just aren't good looking enough or what, but it's definitely more important for women, because I've heard horror stories, luckily never been in one, where, women have found themselves in very unfortunate situations, and you find out about it after the fact. So we don't want to get into those situations. But Amy's exactly right. There was one house I was showing supposed to be vacant. And of course it was the one house where I wasn't like, bang, 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 realtor. Because just like Amy said, you always announce yourself. And this was one of them, and there was no lights. It was like 8:00 at night. And I walked in, and sure enough, in the corner, there was a homeless person shooting up, right? And they looked at us like, oh my God. And, I had my concealed carry at the time, but I didn't have my firearm on me. Luckily, my buyer did. So he didn't pull it out, but he put his hand on it and was like, hey, what's going on? We need you to leave. And luckily they were not violent. Nothing ended up happening, but I had to call the cops, right? Because the house is supposed to be vacant. It's not vacant. So as a realtor, you have to do what's right and you have to call the cops. So just be very careful when you're there. Always announce yourself. If anything feels suspicious, bounce, right? we used to have a lady on our team, and it was an internet lead, especially with internet leads. And the internet lead was all too quick to agree to meet her. And then she was like, well, where do you want to meet? And he was like, oh, well, I'm staying in this hotel on such and such. That just doesn't feel right, right? So there's more than enough business to go around. Do not feel like you have to put yourself in harm's way. If it feels off, if your gut is kicking, don't go, right? Or if you pull up and you feel like it's wrong. I had one, this was actually a guy, one realtor buddy of mine, he pulled into a driveway and then a truck came and blocked the driveway. And then they held him at gunpoint and said, give me all your money, give me every credit card you have, and give me everything. And, he gave it to him, and then the truck backed away and he left. But, just be careful. That's what I'm getting at is, and I don't say this to like, oh my God, I don't want to show homes anymore. No, that's not what I'm saying, but be very, very careful when doing it. And if your gut kicks at all, you don't need that one client, right? You can find plenty more. So get yourself out of those situations. So thank you, Amy, for bringing that up. I didn't even think about going into that.
Well, and Drew, I would say that's another reason that you never want to show properties to anyone that's not pre-approved. For one, you don't want to waste your time. We've talked about that. If they're not financially ready, you should not be showing them houses yet, because any house on the market now won't be when they're ready.
Correct.
Second reason of pre-approval is that when they call that lender and they have to give their social security number, and then you reach out to that lender and say, they got pre-approved, everything looked good. If someone's looking to do you harm, they're not giving out their social security and all that information to the lender. And the buyer consultation, that should always happen. It should always happen first and foremost. You really should have them come into the office. Sometimes we do have to meet at the first house or meet at a Starbucks. Get them into the office as much as possible, because if someone's coming into your office, they probably aren't intending to do you harm, because they don't know that we don't have them on camera.
Yep. And as much as you can help it. Now, there's always an extenuating circumstance, but never go to them. Never meet them at their house. If they will not come to the office, just like Amy said, go to a Starbucks, go somewhere public, fight to go. Now, have I met people at their house? Yes. That's sometimes, there was someone I was helping and he was in a wheelchair and all this stuff. And so sometimes it can't be helped, but as much as you can, and again, trust your gut. Just try to not meet them anywhere but the office or a public place. Because when a guy hears a woman on the other end of the phone, unfortunately, there are just guys out there who think differently and see an opportunity to do something they shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, and I know there's several agents that in our office that have taken their husbands with them, and the husband sat outside of the car. And so if they felt like, well, I don't know, just something is off, I don't really know this person, don't hesitate to have somebody just kind of be outside. And just like Drew said, don't park to where they can block you in. But you can just park on the side street and as you meet them up at the house, you can wave back, oh yeah, that's my husband, he's just with me today, but don't worry, we can take our time. They're not going to think anything of that if they're not doing you harm. But if all of a sudden they're put off and they're like, well, I don't have time, and they're out, then you get rid of that person. Yep. And I would also say, be careful going down in the basement with people. Oh, yeah. And don't ever put yourself like where they're in between you and the door. Don't put your back to them until you're just really comfortable with them. You do have to be super careful with this stuff.
Yep, absolutely.
If I can jump on, I'm sorry, I came late. I was on a very, very long-winded board meeting. My mom, so I'm a second generation realtor. My mom used to take my stepfather with her if she had to show houses after 3:00 in the afternoon. And she was a realtor in Florida. My stepfather always went with her at 3:00 in the afternoon. It was his job.
Yep.
And so it's just because she was freaked by stuff that she'd heard in the media and the press. So I think it was smart of her, being an older woman, being an older person. I think it was smart of her when she was before she retired.
Yep. Hey, Sean. So obviously that's very important, and Amy, thank you for bringing that up. But I never want to end on a negative note, so let's get back to the positive stuff. So what else can I tell you guys, right? We got about 8 minutes before we need to wrap it up here. So tell me what other value I can bring. What other questions do you guys have? What other expectations do we need to break down? How else can we set you guys up for success?
Do you ever have situations where you go back and retour a house?
Sometimes, yeah, you have some clients, especially if they're a high C, that want to go back and see it the second time. And it's normally if in today's market, second viewings are not as common, obviously. But if you do go back the second time, it's amazing how the showing changes. I will tell you that. And I would say set that expectation, because otherwise they're going to go back and be let down, right? When we see it the first time, we get so excited and we just overlook things. And then you go back the second time, we tell people it's like taking off your rose-colored glasses. You're going to start to notice the wood rot that's inevitably there. You're going to notice the paint scuffs and just things like that. But what I always tell people is, hey, let's go back and look at the space. Hey, let's go back and look at the updates, right? Like, what is the reason for going back? And remind them of that, because otherwise they're going to go back and the condition is inevitably going to look lower. And they're going to go, oh my God, what happened to the house? Nothing. You're just seeing it, knowing what to expect, having a higher level of expectations, because when they saw it the first time, their excitement was up. So they felt a different way about it, right? So you can do one of two things. You can get them back in that excited state and then they'll see it the same way. Or you can just say, hey, what's the reason for going back the second time? Are we going to look at space? Are we going to look at this? Are we going to do measurements? So I think you need to figure out why they want to go back a second time. Because if it's something that, well, I want to look at the HVAC, that can wait for inspection, right? Then you don't need to waste your time to do that. But do people do it? Absolutely. I've had someone, and different price points also sometimes require different looks. I've had some people go back 5 times before they make a decision. And sometimes it can't be helped. But you just got to make sure you know what the goal is so that you're making the most use of your time. Because remember, you never want to leave your family unless you're helping someone out, right? Unless you're adding value to someone else's life. That's the only reason you should ever leave your family. If you leave your family because someone else wants to go see a house for no reason, you should never have left your family. So you really want to make sure that the reason you're leaving your family is compelling enough to where they're not going to get frustrated at you and you're not going to get frustrated at yourself, right? Because I don't want to leave my wife. We're best friends. So I better have a heck of a good reason to leave her every night. And the only way that for me that it works is if I'm adding enough value to someone else's life by helping them get the house of their dreams or whatever that's going to look like. So determine what's important to you, and then does it meet your reasons and give you enough of a reason to leave your family.
Hey, Drew, speaking of family, this is an expectation that we need to be prepared on how to set when your buyers, especially those first-time home buyers, bring their parents along.
Oh my God.
Yeah, how do you rein that in?
Oh. Guys, nobody hates you more than the first-time home buyer's parents. I mean, let's be completely honest, because the first-time home buyer's parents thinks that you're just out to sell their kids a house and you're just in it for the commission. So here's what I always tell first-time home buyers. Hey, are you planning on mom and dad coming to the showing, right? I will blatantly ask that. Do you want mom and dad to see the house before we make an offer? Yes, I do. And then in my head, I'm going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So what you have to do in that aspect, what I love to do is I would say, okay, that's great. Do you think it would be possible for all of us to meet up and just go over what we're looking for before we ever see a house? Because if mom and dad are going to be part of that decision-making process, you got to win them over too. You got to let them know, I'm not talking your kid into anything. I'm helping them find the right house for you. So it's very important in a buyer consult. Any decision makers need to be there with you. So if you find out that mom and dad are now part of the decision-making process, guess what? You need another buyer consult. As much as that stinks, I promise you that's going to save you time later. And if the answer is, well, I'd love them to see it, but their opinion doesn't matter. Here's what you say. Okay, I'm so glad you said that. So here's what we're going to do. You and me are going to go shopping for the house. And when we find it, once it's under contract, we're going to have dad or mom or whoever come to the inspection. How do you feel about that? I guess that's okay. Okay, great. Now I don't have to waste my time to set up a second showing for you and me and mom and dad and for them to say, why did you talk my kid into this house? Right? Because they will. Nobody hates you more than mom and dad of a first-time home buyer. That's just how it is, unfortunately. So thank you for bringing that up, Amy, because that is a tough one sometimes.
It happens. And what I just gently do in the beginning is just let them know that I know you want the best for your child. I do too. And just remember that you had your first house too, and it doesn't look anything like the house that you live in now. So they're making their start now. Mm-hmm.
And it's, yeah, I could go on and on about that one. But basically what you need to figure out is, do they have a say in what house it is? And if they do, they need a buyer consult just like the kids, right? They probably don't need to go as in depth in the process, but just remind them, hey, this is the process. And what you need to do is, use that script I told you earlier. I'm going to talk your kid out of more, I'm going to talk them out of houses, and they're going to talk themselves into it. So whenever they win an argument against me, that's when they know it's the one for me, or for them, excuse me. So really my job is to tell them why they shouldn't buy a house. So really you and me are on the same team, right, Dad? Right? I'll say that to him, right? There's nothing that says you can't. I like to play with people. That's just who I am by nature. I don't take anything too seriously. So I'm like, hey, Dad, how many houses can we knock over, right? How many can we talk them out of, right? I think we can get 10, don't you? Right? All of a sudden now Dad's on my side. Right. So just figure out a way to connect with mom and dad, get them on your team, get them to where they're not like, I can't believe you talked my son into this house. Because that will happen. So, all right. What else? We have 2 more minutes, 2 minutes until you guys got to hop on the team meeting. What else do you guys want to know?
Do parents, they're looking for a house, do they normally bring their kids?
Depends, it depends on age of the kids, how it looks, or, how they parent. I've never really addressed that, but I guess you could. You could say, I guess in today's climate, really, it might be more important than ever to say, hey, because of COVID, I don't think we should bring the kids to the initial showing, but if you want them to see it, I'm happy to set up a showing as we get closer to closing, maybe during the walkthrough, for the kids to see it as well, so they can get excited. So I do think that's important. Yeah, go ahead, Shelly.
I'm so sorry. Zoom, sometimes you talk over people. I don't mean to. I'm sorry. Beth, yesterday I showed a house for my team leader because she's on vacation, and this ginormous van pulled up and all these children rolled out. Not kidding. So luckily they were teenagers, and then there was a little bitty, like a 2-year-old. So, and I just said to the mom, I said, you know what? I said, I'm so glad to meet you all today. I said, I'm a mama too. I said, it's not a great idea to have children in other people's houses at this time because of the COVID virus. So I said, I hope you understand. I said, can your older girls watch her while we go in? And if you want the older girls to see the house, maybe we can take turns. And she said, oh, that's a great idea. So we took turns taking the older teenagers in because they wanted to see the house too and what their rooms would look like, but they weren't all in the house, and I didn't let the 2-year-old in. It's kind of an uncomfortable situation.
Even without COVID,
yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Even without COVID,
yeah,
I will say sometimes it's hard to look at a house and parent, right? So especially when you have younger kiddos who need constant watching and constant, oh, don't put your finger in that outlet, or whatever it's going to be, it's hard to focus on looking at a house with a toddler. So you might bring that up as well. And, I'll be honest with you, I've never addressed that in a buyer consult. I think it's a great idea, now that we're sitting here talking about it. So I'm probably going to include that in any buyer consults I have in the future. So thank you. But I have before at like a second or third showing brought it up to the parents and been like, guys, can I ask you a question? Like, how much did you really get out of today's showing? I thought we did okay. Really? Because from my vantage point, it looked like you all were doing a lot of parenting, and there's nothing against that. But I want to make sure you guys don't miss a house or think that oh my God, what if you think you love it and really you didn't like it, but because you were so distracted, you thought you did, and then you bought the wrong house. I don't want that to happen to you guys. So do you think it's okay if if you have to bring the child one at a time, right? Like let's do one parent at a time, like Shelly said, or do you have daycare or babysitter or something like that that's available, right? I have said that before. but I've never set the expectation in the consultation. So I do like the idea. So, all right, we are at 10:56, and oh my gosh, I am on time. Amy has never been more proud of me. I am going to let you go, but Amy is going to give you guys my contact info. If you guys ever have a question or ever need to just chat about anything, I am right here, happy to help. And just be safe out there. Go sell all of the homes. I promise COVID is going to have no impact on your all's businesses. If anything, it should boost it. You know, this is the time where you take your market share. So go out there, sell some homes. And I was very impressed with you all. And I know you all are going to knock it out of the park.
Thank you so much. Learned a lot.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Bye.